hymn that is probably taken more of a look of an anthem in terms of the way it's recognized and the way it's treated in our society and our culture. And it's this America the Beautiful. America the Beautiful is the title of the anthem or the tune or of the hymn that we see published in our hymn books. And you'll see on the back side, on the second half of your page, you'll see that that's actually straight out of our hymn book, public domain. And so we were able to print that for the use of our for the purpose of what we're doing here tonight. And for the most part, America the Beautiful shows up as public domain in nearly every one of its settings and every one of its publications. And we're going to find out a little bit later why that happens, because it was not a very expensive, very little hymn to write. We're going to find out. America the Beautiful is probably Catherine Lee Bates is probably the person who's more known for this because of her poem that she wrote. And so let's talk a little bit of kind of what happened. Catherine Lee Bates was born in Massachusetts, and her father was a pastor of a congregational church, and her folks had obviously a big influence on her life in terms of her willingness to stay focused on her writing and that sort of thing, especially her father. But Catherine attended, basically she went to school and high school and college and everything pretty much in the same little area. She didn't travel around a whole bunch until a little bit later in her life. And we're going to see that time that she did travel ended up being a very significant event, not only to her, but to us as well because of this song. But she pretty much stuck around that Boston, the Massachusetts area, and even got her master's degree and eventually became an English professor, and being influenced not only by Wellesley but also by Oxford as well too. She became a writer and a poet. And she wrote books later on, travel books as well as children's books. And she was, interestingly, she was a contributor to quite a number of publications, but not under her own name. I guess it was kind of common, especially for women at the time, to write under a man's name because it was more likely for their work to be published. Or to at least gain a reading initially because it had a man's name associated with it. And so she would write under the pseudonym of James Lincoln. So James Lincoln was who she took that little name of and ended up getting quite a bit of her stuff published. Atlantic Monthly was one of the things. And her poem, America, was also published by a church publication called The Congregationalist. We'll talk a little bit about that as well too. But she died on September 28, 1929. And I know I wrote this down there, but you know what the significance of that is. She died just a month before that, October 29th, a month and a day after she died. A lot of other people died too because they had lost all their money, and many people were taking their own lives on when that stock market crashed in October of 1929. Interesting time in our American history. In 1893, at the age of 33, Bates, who was, as we said earlier, an English professor at Wellesley College, traveled by train to Colorado Springs, Colorado. How many of you have ever been to Colorado Springs, Colorado? I figured a big portion of you had. She got up to, the reason she went was because she was going to be teaching really just for a short while it's like a summer kind of class or a summer term in Colorado Springs at one of the colleges there. English literature. And as she was traveling, obviously, a person who's a writer has a lot of sources that they see. And when you're on a train, you have nothing to do but sit there and look out the window and watch life go by. Well, as she was traveling, she saw a lot of things that eventually became part of this poem that she wrote when she got to Colorado Springs, Colorado. One of those things was as she was traveling through Kansas, the wheat was out in the fields, and this phrase that you see, amber waves of grain, was rolling around in her mind, this picture at least of the wheat that was blowing in the wind. And then also cities that were and buildings in Chicago that were referred to as the White City, which were eventually promised to contain buildings that were alabaster. So again, that as well. But here's what Catherine makes. She says, one day some of the other teachers and I decided to go on a trip to one of the 14,000 foot peaks that was there. Julia, maybe you can remind me, or Paul, I'm not sure how many of the peaks in Colorado in that part of the state are actually 14,000 feet and above, but quite a number of the peaks that are referred to as peaks, because they're all named after, what we would call colleges or universities, are all above 14,000. I think there are 9 of them. Not sure. I'm probably wrong, but I think it's somewhere around that number. But they're all in the 14,000 feet and above at the peak. And so you're talking about high peaks in Colorado. Obviously, the Rocky Mountains are known for its high peaks. Her and several of the other teachers decided they wanted to go on a trip to one of those peaks that they had access to. And outside of Colorado Springs, it's Pikes Peak. And so what they did was they got together and they hired this wagon, I guess, to basically take them. And when they got to the top of it, or near the top, they actually couldn't take the wagon the whole way, so they actually had to get on mules to go the remainder of the distance to get up to the top of the peak. And so they got up there, and even though she was tired, she makes this quote. She says, I was very tired, but when I saw the view, I felt great joy. All of the wonder of America seemed displayed there. It was like a sea-like expanse, is what she says. So she sat on Pikes Peak, and I don't know what all was going through her mind. I know that part of the story that I've heard before is that she wrote it while she was on Pikes Peak, but in fact she didn't. She did not write this poem that she called America until she got back to her hotel room back in town. And so, so all these folks that say she had pen and paper and she was sitting on top of Pikes Peak writing America the Beautiful, that's where she certainly was inspired. And many of the words began to come to and roll across her mind. And so literally when she got back down into town, she got back to her hotel, she poured out these words when she got back to her hotel. The poem did not get published for another 2 years. It was another 2 years later, and it was published in a weekly publication called The Congregationalist. That was a church publication, and it was the 4th of July edition that it got published in. And so it seems to make sense because of its patriotic style and all of that. It was published by The Congregationalist, which is that publication, in 1895, in July of 1895. Later, she revised it a little bit, and it was published in the Boston Evening Transcript, and then later on, she edited it a little bit more and changed some things, and it was published. It was reviewed by an editor from the New York Times. And so at this point, then she's getting a lot of eyes across the country that are singing this song. One of those people was Samuel Augustus Ward. And the interesting thing about this is that Samuel Ward and Catherine Lee Bates never met. They never met because he read that poem, and he had a hymn that he was writing at the time that was to become this, that he used this tune for. He meant it for another hymn that he had written the tune for, or the text for. And it's, let me make sure I get this right. That tune was about Jerusalem. And we're going to see it here in just a little second. I want to make sure I get that tune name right. Maybe some of you have already read through and see it. Oh, Mother, dear Jerusalem. That's right. That's it. Oh, Mother, dear Jerusalem. So you can kind of see how that would fit that tune, and how it all worked out. Samuel Ward was a church organist for Grace Episcopal Church in Newark, New Jersey. And as I said, yeah, there it is. Oh, Mother, dear Jerusalem. He later on the tune name Materna. And if you look in your hymn books, or if you look on the back side of that page, you're going to see where the tune name says Materna. And guess what Materna is referenced to? Mother. That's right. Oh, Mother, dear Jerusalem. So it says that's where he gets that tune from. So that tune. The interesting thing about it is several other people tried to wed Catherine Bates' poem to other tunes, but it was this tune that, because it was such a good fit, and maybe because of the nature of the tune itself, that it has become and has stuck as the tune that everybody associates with America the Beautiful. And so it's the one that has stayed there and was associated with it. Just as she was inspired to write because of the thing, Samuel Ward was also inspired to write the hymn, but obviously not for the same reason, because it was inspired by something totally different. He was actually, the tune came to him while he was on a ferry boat trip, coming back from Coney Island in New York in 1882. And this tune, I'm not sure what goes on in the mind of an artist like this, but he's got this tune that is just ringing around in his head. And he's so anxious, literally, that he reaches over to somebody else that's on the boat, and he begs them. He says, I don't have anything to write this on. Can I literally take the cuff off of your shirt? And so he takes it and he writes what he can of this tune on this person's shirt, because I guess he was afraid that he'd lose it before he got back off the boat. And I'm not sure what artists are thinking when they're in the moment. They've got to put this down, or they're going to lose it, or maybe I don't know. But at least that's what Samuel Ward was afraid of. He was so anxious that he took it and wrote it on a shirt cuff. But it was in 1910 that America the Beautiful wedded with Materna was actually first published. Interesting thing is, Samuel Ward died in 1904. So it was years after he had died before it actually literally got published, before he put them together, and it was out there for a few years. And then it finally got published. And of course, from there, it just, in popularity, it just grew. As a matter of fact, there have been groups of individuals and even famous individuals who have attempted to make America the Beautiful our national anthem, and have even petitioned our government to let it take the place of our current national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. And of course, obviously, that hasn't happened and likely will never happen. But America the Beautiful has that level of significance in the minds and hearts of Americans, that we love this song. We do. When we sing it, it brings things out within us emotionally, that is this level of patriotism. And I think probably most of us would even say that that's probably happened to us at some point when we've been singing this hymn, whether it was in a church service or somewhere in a community park, in a patriotic kind of gathering. So lots of people, but John F. Kennedy's administration was one of the ones that was really hounded to make some kind of a legal decision to make this our national anthem. And of course, it never did take place. Catherine Bates sold this song to the Congregationalists for $5. She got paid $5, and then she had to sign a release saying that she signed off her rights to the poem. But this is just the poem, right? And then when Samuel Ward put it together, he died before it was ever published. And so neither one of them, including their families, have made any money off of this song and you think about it, what 100 years has gone by, and what a widely sung song, and many people have made arrangements of it. Ray Charles has a very famous, obviously, real famous version of America the Beautiful, and lots of people have made money in that way, but neither one of the families. So for a $5 bill, this started its life, and who knows? I don't know. Maybe when composers, musicians, artists put their work on paper or put it down in a visible form, they think, I'm not sure I'll get what I can get for it, and then eventually maybe that work takes on a whole nother life after it's sold, that work. And that is definitely the case, and that's definitely what happened with America the Beautiful. So let's sing it, okay? So if you did not get a copy of it as you came in the door, you will reach down to hymn number 630. Hymn number 630, is that right? I think so. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on me, and I could live from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrims whose stern passions rest, author of their for freedom across the wilderness. America, God sent thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for evil deliberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, we God
be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful